Hello there, people of the internet. As I look at my pile of stuff beside me, I'm thinking about what it is that I want to make a video on and what it is that I want to talk about. And I look and I'm like, nah, I want to talk about that, but people don't really care about that. I want to talk about that, but again, people don't really have that on their radar. And as I was looking at these things, I was like, man, I wish people talked more about these. I was like, there's our video. We're going to go ahead and look at 5 cripplingly underrated cartridges that I think absolutely should not only make a comeback, but should get better, what's the word I'm looking for? Get a bigger spotlight in terms of people paying attention to them. Because most of the time, whenever people are talking about whatever it is that they're going to be using today, they're focusing on mostly your mainstay modern cartridges or things that are still in use or still in production. Like there's a lot of talk about 223 and 308 9mm. There's a lot of talk about 45, 40 Smith & Wesson. A lot of people talk about 7.62 by 54R just because it's still used and still very predominant. But there's so many things out there that aren't really touched nowadays that absolutely should be, and we are 100% missing the ball on a lot of it. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into this. Let's look at some stuff. I'm going to say one of the most underrated cartridges is going to be your 8x50 Steyr. Not 8x56, which I guess I would call it underrated as well. But the 8x56 has way more of a spotlight than the 8x50 cartridge. Anyone who's actually went out and fired 8x50 in one of these old Steyr rifles knows that it's pretty light recoiling, and you get a fair amount of power going downrange, and you get a fair amount of accuracy, and it's overall a fairly decent cartridge. But whenever you have that 8x50 cartridge and you combine it with, say, a Steyr carbine, however it is you want to pronounce that, you get a really lightweight, really comfortably shooting rifle. Like, I love these little Steyr carbines. Like, normally I'm a long rifle kind of guy, but I've got a couple of these now, and some of them are just so magically good whenever it comes to the amount of energy that I can put down on a target while still having something that is light recoiling, but still something that I can carry around pretty gosh darn easy. I don't know what kind of wood these are made out of. I'm gonna guess walnut, because it's not overly heavy, but it's not exactly lightweight either for its size. You could, I guess, find yourself a sporterized one of these that maybe has some of the wood and other furniture cut down, but there's very little wood around this metal, so you really wouldn't save much in terms of weight. But look at how small this thing is, and you're rocking an 8mm cartridge. Oftentimes I'll load these with 198 grain projectiles, the same projectiles that I'll use with 8mm Mauser. Granted, you might want to use a little bit larger of a projectile. Go ahead and actually slug your board to figure out what size projectile it is that you need for your particular rifle. But out of my carbines, at not really booking it velocities, they're fairly accurate. I imagine if I used proper size projectiles, then they can be even more accurate, but at the distances I shoot at, then it's absolutely good enough. Severely underrated cartridge, like severely underrated cartridge, and I think a lot of that has to do with a lack of ammunition availability. But the people who actually know about the cartridge and take it out, shoot their rifles, use them and whatnot, they're fairly nice. They're actually very nice. They're very comfortable, very lightweight, very nice shooting rifles. Okay, before I go repeating myself even more, let's go ahead and have a look at our next one. Next one, I get this gun is not chambered in what it is that we're going to be talking about, but it's what I have sitting here, so it's what I'm going to grab. Next one's going to be your 7.5 Swiss. I'm not a particularly big fan of 7.5 Swiss, and the people who are fans of it are like really hardcore fans of it because they know just how good the ammunition can be. One of the big things with that cartridge is it's fired out of these old Schmidt-Rubin straight pull style guns, but these are overwhelmingly well-made firearms, and oftentimes they're in really good shape just because they don't really have a history of battle behind them. Combine the really nice firearm that is in really good shape with the essentially match grade ammunition that the Swiss would make for these rifles, because they could afford to make really good ammunition because they had the time and equipment and manpower and whatever it is that they needed to do it. And you get yourself some really accurate ammunition, and it's powerful and capable. It's about on par with the capabilities of that of 7.62 NATO, but it is it's a little bit more than that. With 7.62 NATO, there's a variety of different rifles that you could run this stuff in, but whenever you get yourself one of these Schmidrubin straight pull rifles, firing ammunition that was specifically designed for that rifle, it is just a chef's kiss of pleasantries taking that out to the range. And they're overwhelmingly accurate too. I think the world record for the longest iron sight shot is like 2,200 yards, and it's held with one of these Swiss guns using that 7.5 Swiss ammunition. It is a severely, cripplingly underappreciated round. There's not a whole lot of buzz around it simply because most people are focused on your modern cartridges. And boy, are those people missing out. The guys who actually know about these guns and rock them to their full potential, they know how good they actually are. All right, another cripplingly underrated cartridge is going to be 7mm Mauser. This is an Oviedo Mauser. This one's actually chambered in 7.62 Setme, but they originally were chambered in 7mm Mauser. I've got several 7mm Mausers. This is just the one I had near me. But your 7mm Mauser, that is a very early cartridge, and it was dramatically overshadowed by 8mm Mauser just because the 8mm Mauser was mass-produced over a tremendous number of countries for a tremendous number of firearms. And it was used in various conflicts, various wars. It just has way more of a spotlight than 7mm Mauser does. And so as a result, 7mm Mauser just kind of has fallen back in terms of popularity. I love it. Plenty of people out there love it. It's a very light recoiling, very capable cartridge. There's been some big things that have been put down with the 7mm Mauser cartridge. The issue is there's not a whole lot of surplus out there, and there's not a whole lot of companies making ammo for it. Whenever they do make ammo for it, they're doing like 1-round batches of it a year, and then they ship that out to the public, and whenever it's bought up and sold and gone, that's it. That's all that we get until the next batch is prepared for and set up and sent out. There's not a whole lot of ammo available for these, and whenever you do find the ammo, it's kind of expensive, but the cartridge itself, like I said, is severely underrated. A lot of times whenever people are looking at 7mm, they're looking at you more, like I said, modern cartridges, like say 7mm 08 or 7mm Remington Magnum or something like that. But you start looking at the ballistic capabilities of your 7mm Mauser, and considering that it was made in the late 1800s, you're like, wow, that is really not all that far off. As a matter of fact, it's kind of impressive what it is that this cartridge was capable of doing for the time period. We really have not advanced all that much in terms of cartridge technology. Now, maybe in the next few years, we'll start to see something, but right now, we are still basically where it is that we were at. We just have bigger, harder hitting, higher pressure rounds. All right, up next, this right here is one that I consider to be underrated, but it's one of the least underrated cartridges, and that's going to be your 44 Magnum. Whenever a lot of people think 44 Magnum, they oftentimes think of it out of a revolver, and it's good for like bear defense or whatever it is that you're wanting to use that for, and it's a common looked at go-to cartridge with handguns. But the instant you load one of those 44 Magnum rounds into, say, a lever action rifle, you start to see like energy transfers that are within the realms of rifle capabilities with your pistol cartridge. The 44 Magnum from a full-length barrel is quite the serious force to be reckoned with, especially if you're rocking a spicy loaded 44 Magnum. A lot of your rifles can handle those spicy loaded rounds. A lot of stigma around what the 44 cartridge can and cannot do. And I think a lot of that has to do with like Hollywood and the various depictions on 44 Magnum it is that they've had come out. Like, a lot of times people will think if you shoot something, say a two-legged critter that's causing you issue, you shoot it with your 44 Magnum. They think it's like the movies where he gets hit and he goes absolutely flying across the room. That's not going to happen. As a matter of fact, I don't think that would happen with even your most powerful of rifle cartridges. 44 Magnum is still a handgun cartridge. But if you get the combination of 44 Magnum in a lever action and inside of a revolver, you have some serious capabilities, especially from that rifle. 44 Magnum in a revolver is already pretty well known, pretty reviewed. A lot of people are well aware of it, but not very many people seem to pay attention to the capabilities of that cartridge from a rifle, and that is why I think it is pretty gosh darn severely underrated. At the distances that most people shoot at, 44 Magnum is plenty accurate for the targets that most people are needing to hit. It's not exactly a sniper cartridge, don't get me wrong, but it's a very powerful, very capable cartridge that does come in repeating rifles, or you can go out and get yourself single shots, and I'm sure there's even some what are they called? Self-loading rifles out there that are semi-automatic. That might have a 44 Magnum chambering. There may even be some semi-automatic handguns that you can chamber in the cartridge, but I think by a huge margin you're going to find them in lever actions and revolvers just because they're a rimmed cartridge. Again, underrated cartridge, but that's one of the least underrated cartridges. And now we are going to move on to... This isn't really a cartridge, but I still feel like it's pretty gosh darn significantly underrated. It is a shotgun shell. This right here is a Remington rolling block. This particular one is dated, I think it's 1883. Yep, dated 1883. And it was converted to fire 28 gauge shotgun shells. It is just a single shot breech loader. Right here's our breech. You open it up, you close it, you pull your trigger, hammer drops, and the hammer dropping holds the breech closed, and that's how you know you're not going to fire out of battery. The 28 gauge shotgun shell is cripplingly underrated, to the point to where many people haven't even heard of the thing. Whenever I say that this is underrated, a lot of people lean towards power and capability, and they're like, I don't know how that's underrated. Whenever we start looking at the popular cartridges, like the popular shotgun shells, then we look at the 12 gauge and the 20 gauge and the 410 gauge. That's probably your big three in terms of popularity. There's a big power gap between the 20 gauge and the 410 gauge, and the 28 gauge just stands really, really well there in the center. It's a really, really good combination of a lack of recoil while still having a fair amount of power going downrange. The 410, yes, I'm not saying it's not good, but it has let me down on numerous occasions, and that's just because of the limitations of the size of the case. You really can't jam that much inside of that case. It's like the size of a 45 caliber cartridge. As a matter of fact, I think you can fire 45 long Colt from a 410. But long story short, just because of the dimensions of the cartridge, it just doesn't have as much power or as much capacity to be able to do the things that I would want a shotgun shell to be able to do. And 20 gauge, which is the next higher up, it can be a little intimidating, especially for, say, small-statured people or people with arthritis or people that are challenged whenever it comes to running firearms. Maybe they need something with a little less recoil or something that is... You know, insert your choice of excuse here as to why you would need reduced power with your shotgun shells. And the 28 gauge, like I said, falls right smack in the middle of the capabilities of those two cartridges. It is a really good way to get a fair amount of power without having to get a whole bunch of recoil and sound and retort, and it's a fair amount of power without having to be too much. And most people don't even know it exists. And that makes me really sad because I think the 28 gauge is my favorite shotgun shell loading, and they sell them at Walmart. Like, that's one of the things that you can go out and get really regularly from even the most bare bones basic sporting goods store. So there we go. There are my 5 underrated cartridges, and I think that I picked a really, really good 5 because I feel like these in particular are significantly underrated. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below is a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off. Have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you on the next episode.
Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.